On the night of May 5, 2019, the Arabian Sea appeared calm and serene, its dark waters shimmering quietly under the gentle glow of the moon. But beneath that tranquil surface, tension was thick and unmistakable, as if the sea itself was holding its breath. Cutting through the darkness, the USS Abraham Lincoln, a massive aircraft carrier, led a formidable strike group steadily toward the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf. The fleet's silhouette loomed large against the horizon, a moving fortress of steel and resolve. This was no routine patrol. The deployment was a deliberate message to Iran, a calculated show of force, designed to deter any hint of aggression without firing a single shot. Every ship, every jet, every sailor was part of a high-stakes warning. The Armada was bristling with power, cruisers armed with Tomahawk missiles, destroyers equipped with the latest radar and missile defense systems, each vessel ready for whatever might come. Below the waves, a silent submarine prowled, its presence unseen but its threat unmistakable, adding another layer of deterrence to the American force. On the flight deck, rows of F/A-18 Super Hornets gleamed under the deck lights, their pilots and crews on constant alert, ready to launch at a moment's notice. The world learned of the deployment suddenly. In Washington, officials cited troubling and escalatory indications from Iran, but the details remained shrouded in secrecy, fueling speculation and anxiety across the globe. For the thousands of sailors aboard, the abrupt change in orders meant leaving behind routine and heading straight for one of the world's most volatile maritime choke points, where history has often been written in moments of crisis. The Persian Gulf itself is a narrow, crowded waterway, vital to global oil shipments and regional security. The arrival of such a powerful force was a direct challenge to Iran's influence, and a signal that the United States was prepared to defend its interests. Iranian IRGC Navy fast attack boats darted through the waters, weaving between merchant ships and warships alike, their unpredictable maneuvers raising the ever-present risk of miscalculation or accidental confrontation. In the control rooms, sailors watched their screens with intense focus, knowing that a single mistake, a misread signal, a misunderstood maneuver could ignite a conflict with consequences far beyond these waters. Iranian surveillance boats and drones likely tracked every move, their cameras and sensors fixed on the American fleet. Both sides' commanders remained on high alert, aware that every decision could tip the balance. The young sailors on deck understood the gravity of their mission. They were not just crew members. They were the front line of a geopolitical crisis, their actions carrying the weight of nations. The glassy calm of the Gulf's surface was deceptive, hiding a storm of political and military pressure swirling just beneath. Every ship, every sailor, every decision was part of a tense and dangerous game. Around the world, governments and citizens watched anxiously, following news reports and official statements, waiting to see if the standoff would hold, or if the fragile peace would shatter. The silent tension was palpable. Every face on deck reflected the knowledge that one wrong move, one misjudged signal, could change everything in an instant. As dawn approached, the steel wall of American power stood firm on the horizon. The stakes had never been higher, and the world could only wait to see what would come next. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow, 21-mile-wide channel, but its importance far outweighs its size. This slender waterway is one of the most critical maritime choke points on the planet, serving as a vital artery for global commerce and energy. It connects the oil-rich Persian Gulf to the vast open waters of the world's oceans, acting as the only sea passage from the Gulf to the Arabian Sea and beyond. Every day, massive oil tankers navigate these waters, carrying about 1/5 of the world's oil supply, energy that fuels cities, industries, and economies from Tokyo to New York, London to Mumbai. Any disruption here, even a brief one, would send oil prices skyrocketing, triggering economic shockwaves that would be felt in every corner of the globe. The world's dependence on this route makes it a constant flashpoint. That's why ensuring freedom of navigation through the strait has been a core U.S. Navy mission for decades, with American warships maintaining a vigilant presence. Iran, which borders the strait to the north, fully understands its strategic value. The Iranian government has repeatedly threatened to close the strait in times of tension, using it as leverage in regional and global disputes. The IRGC Navy's fast attack boats are specifically designed for these shallow, narrow waters, practicing swarming tactics to overwhelm much larger ships and keep adversaries on edge. For Western military planners, the threat of closure is not just theoretical. It's a real and persistent concern that shapes strategy and deployments in the region. The presence of a U.S. carrier strike group in these waters sends a powerful message. The strait will remain open, and any attempt to close it will be met with overwhelming force. The message is simple and unmistakable. Global energy supplies will not be held hostage, and the world's economies will not be threatened by a single choke point. The steel hulls of American warships draw a line in the sand, standing as a visible guarantee of free passage for all. The world's most important oil artery must stay open no matter the threats, because the stability of global energy and the prosperity of nations depends on it. The 2019 standoff was just the latest chapter in a long, bitter U.S.-Iran history. Relations soured after the 1979 Iranian Revolution and the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis. The 1980s saw direct U.S. involvement in the Iran-Iraq tanker war, and the tragic downing of an Iranian airliner by the USS Vincennes. In the 21st century, Iran's nuclear program became the main flashpoint, leading to years of sanctions. The 2015 nuclear deal offered hope, but the U.S. withdrew in 2018, reimposing harsh sanctions. This shattered diplomatic progress and set the stage for renewed confrontation. Against this backdrop, the USS Abraham Lincoln sailed toward the Gulf. With the U.S. Armada in place, the Gulf became a tinderbox, its waters bristling with tension and uncertainty. The presence of so many warships signaled not just strength, but the possibility of sudden conflict at any moment. On May 12, 2019, 4 oil tankers were damaged by limpet mines near the UAE, sending shockwaves through global markets and raising fears of a wider confrontation. The attacks left the world questioning who was behind the sabotage. The U.S. quickly blamed Iran, which vehemently denied any involvement, deepening the diplomatic standoff and fueling mutual suspicion. A month later, 2 more tankers were attacked in the Gulf of Oman. One set ablaze, its crew desperately rescued by the U.S. Navy. The region was gripped by fear as the pattern of attacks continued. The U.S. released video evidence it claimed implicated Iran, but Tehran dismissed it as a fabrication, calling the footage a setup designed to justify escalation. The crisis peaked on June 20th, when Iran shot down a U.S. surveillance drone, claiming it had violated their airspace. The incident marked a dangerous turning point, with both sides trading accusations. The U.S. denied Iran's claim, insisting the drone was flying over international waters, not Iranian territory. The world watched anxiously as the two nations edged closer to open conflict. For a moment, war seemed inevitable. Fighter jets were readied, and crews braced for orders that could change the course of history. President Trump approved, then called off retaliatory strikes just minutes before launch, citing the risk of disproportionate loss of life. The world held its breath as the decision was made. The world stepped back from the brink, but the crisis was far from over. Tensions simmered, and uncertainty lingered over the Gulf. The standoff had become dangerously real, with every sailor and officer on edge, knowing that a single miscalculation could spark disaster. The risk of escalation remained high, and the world watched, hoping that diplomacy would prevail over the drums of war. In Washington, the deployment was about deterrence, forcing Iran to change its behavior without triggering war. The tanker attacks and drone shootdown were seen as Iranian aggression, but the U.S. response was measured new sanctions, not bombs. The message: America could destroy but chose restraint. In Tehran, U.S. actions were seen as economic warfare and bullying. The withdrawal from the nuclear deal was viewed as betrayal, and the military buildup as a threat to sovereignty. Iran's leaders framed their actions as defensive, denying the tanker attacks and celebrating the drone shootdown as a victory. For them, standing up to the U.S. was a matter of pride and survival. Both sides saw themselves as responding to provocation. The standoff was as much about narrative as it was about military might. Each side drew its own line in the sand. For American sailors in the Gulf, geopolitics became daily reality. Life on a carrier was demanding. 12-hour shifts, constant drills, and the ever-present threat of conflict. Iranian fast boats often approached, testing nerves and discipline. U.S. commanders faced split-second decisions threat, or posturing. The stress was relentless, the stakes high. On the other side, Iranian sailors saw the U.S. fleet as an invading force, training for asymmetric warfare. Both sides were young, far from home, carrying out orders in a tense, uncertain environment. The standoff was not just about ships and strategy, it was about people caught in the middle. the human cost of brinkmanship was felt on every deck. As summer 2019 wore on, the crisis eased, but the U.S. Navy stayed vigilant. No major battles were fought, but a different kind of victory was achieved. The Strait of Hormuz stayed open. The carrier strike group's presence reassured commercial shipping and stabilized global markets. The fleet projected power and bought time for diplomacy. The U.S. also led a multinational coalition to patrol the Gulf, sharing the burden of maritime security. This international effort showed the world's commitment to keeping sea lanes open. The greatest achievement was the war that didn't happen. By deterring further escalation, the U.S. Navy prevented catastrophe. The silent steel wall held the line, not by fighting, but by preventing a fight. Peace and commerce continued. A quiet success felt worldwide. Sometimes the most important victories are the ones no one sees. The 2019 Gulf crisis proved that sometimes, restraint is the greatest strength. The U.S. chose not to retaliate militarily after the drone shoot-down, prioritizing stability over escalation. This was not weakness, but confident power, showing the wisdom to avoid unnecessary war. Back channels and diplomacy helped prevent disaster, even without formal ties. The lesson: military power is most effective when it creates space for diplomacy. The real victory is in choosing peace over conflict. As new crises emerge, the question remains, will restraint work again? The world is watching and waiting for the next test.